We are juggling the show a little bit right now. Our guest, who was going to be at the top of the show, is now joining us, Mustafa Barghouti, and then we'll get back to Prince Turki at the end of the show and continue this fascinating conversation on Afghanistan. Mustafa Barghouti is joining me now. He's a member of the Palestinian Parliament, General Secretary of the Palestinian National Initiative, and a former Minister of Information. In 2005, he ran for President of the Palestinian National Authority, finishing second to Mahmoud Abbas. He co-founded and heads the Palestinian Medical Relief Committees and is fresh from an appearance on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart. This will not be funny.
No, I hope.
I want to ask you, if we could, as we start, the developments over the last month or so, beginning with this three-way meeting in New York and then the PA's reaction to the Goldstone report. I've had this question for the administration, how they could have miscalculated how they did not understand what the Palestinian reaction would be. But how could the Palestinian leadership not understand what the reaction would be when they make those kinds of judgments? How do they miscalculate like that?
I think that miscalculation is related probably to two factors. One is a serious probably weakness in the decision-making process about who makes the decision and who is consulted when this decision is made, especially when it comes to certain vital issues like the Goldstone report. But I think the second factor is lack of sensitivity to public opinion. And that lack of sensitivity to public opinion comes out from time to time, and it's not coincidental in my opinion. And that relates to a long history, actually, in the PLO, where many people maybe probably did not feel accountable enough. But what happened recently with Goldstone report was a very interesting thing, because the public opinion in Palestine and civil society in particular practically forced the authority to change its attitude and bring back to the report. And we succeeded there. And we worked hand in hand, and we got a majority that supported the document. The question is what will happen in the future?
Well, he bounced back from it, asserting that he'd bring the report back. He also toughened his position on settlements, again reasserting no negotiations without. Is this going to help him? Does his responding to this movement from the bottom help him? His poll numbers were looking good. I haven't seen a poll since this, but I would assume that he has been hurt. Where does he stand right now?
He definitely, this has cost him certain damage, and that's for sure. Now, I think the future will depend, or the position will depend on how much he will stick to his position about settlements. He will face serious pressure to this week end, because he will be meeting with the Secretary of State and Mr. Mitchell and others, who probably are going to push for initiating negotiations without freeze of settlements, at least without freeze of settlements in Jerusalem. And I think that would be a very important turning point, if, especially that we had a Central Council meeting of the PLO, in which came up with two very important decisions. One is that the authority has to stick to its position of not allowing negotiations without freeze of settlements. And also, there was a very clear decision for the first time after 4 trials. We've tried this 4 times. Finally, we got it, which is that the Hague report, the Hague resolution about the wall has to be brought back to the United Nations General Assembly, demanding actions to implement it, and if Israel does not do that, there will be demands for sanctions.
Okay, here's one of the things that has. Let me just say first from the U.S. side that what concerned me about the miscalculation was that an incredible sensitivity to the internal Israeli debate, and no recognition that there is an internal Palestinian dynamic as well. And that causes their tone deafness to one side and their extreme sensitivity to sound of all sorts on the other side. At the same time, the Palestinians have an additional problem I wanted to ask you about, and that is that they talk, sometimes too much. Going out on a limb, boxing themselves into a corner. We won't do this, or this is the end. I can't tell you how many times I've heard this is the end of the peace process. This is a fatal blow to the peace process. This peace process has more than 9 lives. It has 90 lives because it keeps, this is the end of it, and the next day they're back again. And so, and then when they do, after, if we'll vote on Goldstone, Goldstone must happen the very, day that they're backing down. But then they don't even try to spin the decision to explain why they did it. I mean, even if they'd come forward and said, we had to do it because the pressure was unbearable to do it. Don't they get the fact that their words hurt them?
Again, I think you're touching on a very, very important point, very, very important point, because first of all, this relates to the fact that due to the division in Palestine between Gaza and West Bank, Hamas and Fatah, the whole democratic system was hurt. And the Legislative Council have been marginalized. The judiciary system is very weak, and there has been fusion of power, if I might say so, in the executive authority, whether in the West Bank or in Gaza. And that is not helpful, because that hurts the process of democratic decision making. And that's what we need to get out of, because at the end of the day, and here comes the most important issue, I don't believe peace can be made without it being made between two democracies. You cannot impose an agreement from one side on the other. Maybe it can be imposed for a while, but nobody will keep it. So one essential part that I think the people still here in the United States are not paying sufficient attention to is how much it is important to have a true democratic representative system in Palestine for the sake of peace. Now, on the issue of, I think you're right about the negative implications of promising one position and then violating it. That is not good, because it happened several times before, including the meeting, of course, the trilateral meeting, which happened although something else was promised, but nevertheless. But on this specific issue of settlement freeze, I think it is different. Why? Because we have had this experience of 16 years after Oslo of having a peace process that have become a substitute to peace. Mm-hmm. And the biggest lesson that every Palestinian have learned, probably from this process, is that Haidar Abd al-Shafi was so right in 1992-93 when he said, you cannot sign an agreement without at least having a freeze of settlements. In 93, we had 200,000 illegal settlers. Today, we have 500,000 illegal settlers. Not continuing negotiations without freeze of settlements is like undermining the whole potential and possibility of an outcome of this peace process.
I have a few more issues I want to get to, and I want to tell callers that they can give us a call at 001-202-842-5056 here in the U.S., 1-800-528-2090. Egyptian negotiations, the mediation between Hamas and the PA. Again, deadline after deadline after deadline. This is the end. By this date, it has to happen. It doesn't. Is it going to go anywhere? And if so, what has to happen to make it work?
Two things. First of all, real resolution on the side of both Fatah and Hamas that they are really determined to achieve national unity.
Are they?
Oh, obviously not so far.
Yeah.
If they were, we would have been having them.
What would have to be done to make them?
I think what would make them do that is the understanding is that there is no alternative to that. And second, public pressure in that direction. But there is another factor which has to be there, and that is the readiness on both sides to sustain and prevent external pressures from preventing the possibility of achieving national unity. This is so important. And in my opinion, without national unity agreement, nothing can work